And there might be something that the educator listening to this right now that you have pushed aside for so long to play the game of life, to support your family and friends. But you don't have to let that thing just sit in the corner in a box. Like, pull it out, experiment with it, go and take those classes or do that thing you put off for so long. Find what your bike project is and don't wait to start it, because we never really know when we're going to have more time to work on a project or a passion or not.
Hi, it's Morgan Michael, and this is Hindsight 101, where you're going to get practical strategies for designing a life that inspires you, one life edit at a time. Hello, and welcome to Hindsight 101 with me, your host, Morgan Michael, and I'm here with Sam Demma. And it is so nice to have you here. I am delighted to invite you to talk about belonging, how we can best support students, and some tips and tricks that might help us educators, parents, and leaders to help students the best that we can.
Morgan,
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Nice to see you. And did I say your name correctly?
You did.
Yay.
Funny enough, I'm half Italian, half Greek. My real name is Salvatore Demma, but growing up, my family called me Sammy, which only my mom is allowed to call me, just so everyone understands that. But I've gone by Sam my whole life.
Nice. Tell me a little bit about what it is that you do for people who may or may not be super familiar with your work. What is it that you do? Who do you serve? And what's one of your passions?
Every year, I travel about 150 days of the year to school districts across Canada, the United States, and actually even Kenya. This past summer, we did a 6-week speaking tour at 7 different cities in Kenya, delivering stories that move people emotionally. All of my work centers around making an attempt to build better humans, meaning help people recognize the greatness that's already within them, help them make better decisions, to treat themselves and other people with more kindness, empathy, and respect. I stumbled into the work by accident when I was a senior in high school, and we can get into that story in just a moment. But most of my work caters around delivering performances on stage at schools, conferences, and events. I also try my best to share some of my ideas in writing. I released my first book, Empty Your Backpack, which people can find online. I have a kid's book coming out in April, so the speaking and writing is a part of it. I'm also an avid gym goer. I love exercise. I love reading books. I love Latin dancing, and I love tacos. So professional life aside, those are a few things that I enjoy personally.
I love it. I think you and I definitely share a few passions for sure. I also have written books and I love speaking. And it's interesting because I think that the exercise conduit is really great for big ideas and for feeling like a wholehearted, full person that can contribute a lot. I think a lot of people ask, how can you fit in so much into your life? And I think I attribute a lot of that energy, ironically, to exercising. And so I love that you brought that up. And maybe we can dig into that a little bit more as sort of like a self-care or how we replenish ourselves strategy. Tell me a little bit, Sam, about how you did stumble into this, because not everybody finds themselves in your position where they're an author, they're a keynote speaker, they like being in front of teenagers. Many people would be like, that would be my worst nightmare. So how did you get into that?
Imagine you're 13 years old, pursuing your dream to play professional soccer, and your family receives a phone call from a club in Italy asking them to move you there for 6 months of your childhood. I had a lifelong dream from the age of 5 years old to play professional soccer, and we did receive that phone call at 13. My dad was like, go get him. My mom was like, Sammy, please don't go. I did move to Italy for 6 months to pursue that dream, came back so inspired, sacrificed everything in my high school experience for this ambition to play professional soccer. By the time I was in grade 12, a senior in high school, I had a full ride opportunity to go to Memphis University to play for their soccer team, which was like a dream come true. I ended up having 3 major knee injuries, 2 surgeries, tore the cartilage in my right hip, and spent 2 years fighting to get back on the field. It happened before I actually started my post-secondary education at Memphis, so they postponed the scholarship a following year and then dropped it. And I lost myself. I didn't know who Sam was without sports in my life. We often attach our identity so deeply to the things we do and the roles we play every day. Teachers do this too. Educators do this too. Parents do this too. And when I lost the ability to express that part of myself, I just felt like I lost who I was. And I was so fortunate that I had a teacher named Mr. Loudfoot. And I say his name intentionally because I think that education is the most important vocation in the world, but it is often thankless, or people don't get the stories of impact until 15 years down the road. And I try and celebrate him as much as I can because he was an educator who cared. He showed up and he just spoke life into all the students in his classroom. And he taught this lesson one day that a small, consistent action can make a really big change. And he said, take a small, consistent action. It'll make a big impact. I know it's very aligned with some of the messaging that you share. And he challenged us to go do that and see what would happen. And I'm in grade 12, walking home from school. I see a red coffee cup sitting on the sidewalk. I'm sure you could guess the brand of this red, bright coffee cup. I can't tell you because I'm hoping that one day they'll sponsor me, but we'll see. And I just decided my first small action is going to be picking up garbage. And for the next 4 months, I put a garbage bag in my backpack and I picked up trash walking home from school. 4 days, 5 days before the summer break, my best friend sees me driving home from school. He pulls over. Sam, why are you picking up trash? And I explained to him what my teacher taught me, and he said, why don't we do something together with this? So we started this group where every weekend we would pick up trash for 1 hour and invite students to join us. And because we wanted more volunteers, I asked my principal if I could talk for 5 minutes at the end of a monthly assembly. And he said yes, because he wanted kids getting involved, and our school had a lot of litter at lunchtime. And so
win-win.
yeah, it was really a win-win. And we got like 60 some kids giving us their email addresses, and they were so excited about making a difference. And I was like, wow, if we do this for every school on the board, we're going to get so many students involved. So I ended up doing a bunch of them, all these free promotional talks. And at the end of one of them, a principal pulled me aside, handed me an honorarium, and said, we bring in programs all the time. Very rarely do they engage every student, including the students that are disengaged or already hard to reach. There was kids in this room that often don't pay attention, that were locked in. You should consider doing this more. Like, we would love for you to come back and speak for 30 minutes. And at the time, I was like, I don't even know what I would say for 5. What am I going to say for 30? And it started this curiosity. I went home and I searched youth speaker on Google, called everybody I could find. And that was 6 years ago. And since then, yeah, we've done close to 700 events in educational institutions. And I just fell in love with the idea of telling stories that move people emotionally and just remind them of the greatness that is already inside of them.
That is a powerful story. It is so, I think, emotionally charged too, because when I think about big dreams being dashed, so many of us have a vision. And this is something that I like to talk about too, is our 8-year-old self has this vision of what life could be. And we attach ourselves and we attach our entire identity to that. And whether we're conscious of it or not, it's something that many of us do. And then life happens and those things get in the way. And many people sort of lose their way, much as you did. But not everybody gets up. Not everybody finds that resilient next step that you did, which is really inspiring. And I think, as you well know, but I think for the audience too, just knowing that being able to tell your story is inspiring to others. And that idea of the small act, big impact connection is very, very, like you said, aligned with what I believe as well. And I think the power of teachers is resonant. Also, that really is what comes out of this story, as well as the fact that you had a teacher that was like, look, it doesn't have to be this mind-blowing role as a soccer player where you're this big hero. Like, it doesn't have to be that. You can be a hero and you can do it in small, incremental 1% ways and bring people along with you, like engage people and have enrollment from people. And that is the power, I think, of leadership. So it's an inspiring story. And when you think about the message that you might have for that version of yourself that sat on the precipice of this really big opportunity, like, what would you say to yourself knowing what you know now about life, or advice?
It only makes sense looking back. At the time, I didn't understand why I was going through this challenge, but the work that I'm blessed to do today brings me more joy and fulfillment than I believe soccer ever could have. It
Mm.
was the greatest blessing in disguise, but I couldn't positively make that statement until 2 or 3 years in the future when I was looking back. When we're going through a challenging moment, when we're in the eye of the storm, you don't see anything but dust. It's a disaster. But when things settle and you have perspective and life continues, looking back, you often find meaning in the situations you went through. And what I didn't share, what I would love to share, is that Mr. Loudfoot, my teacher, he didn't even know for like a year how much of a difference he made on my life. It wasn't until I invited him and his wife to a presentation that was titled One Teacher Away, where I spoke about this idea that we're all one educator away from being a success, from being from overcoming adversity, from reaching our goals and dreams, that he really understood how much of a difference he made for me. And after the speech ended, he walked over and was like, I don't even remember teaching that lesson in class.
Wow. Wow.
You know, so even the meaningful moments for us may seem insignificant for somebody else. And I think that that's also such an important thing to remind educators and just any human being, because what seems like a small gesture for us can make somebody else feel like they belong or that
Mm.
they're appreciated. I know that belonging is something that you really talk about too.
Yeah. And I love that concept of one teacher away. I had a teacher as well, and I often tell this story when I'm doing keynotes. And he was somebody that showed up. He was my drama teacher. He had a British accent. He spoke in metaphors. He was very, very unorthodox. And he had a way of just seeing who we were. And I remember that I wrote him a letter just saying thank you for everything that he had done for me. You know, I didn't have an easy home life, all of these things. And I remember giving him the letter in 12th grade. We connected and we stayed in touch. He developed terminal cancer, which is a very sad part of his story. And I was devastated because he was such a lifeline. And then I remember visiting his house one time when he wasn't able to make it for a coffee date that we had. His wife opened the door. She gave me a big hug and I walked in. And just before I walked in his room, there on the wall was my letter that I'd written, and it was framed. And I just think, oh my gosh, you know, he was a big part of why I became an educator and why I love, like you said, this idea of finding kind of, you said it differently, building better humans. I love that. But I think this idea of seeing the good in people, being able to help them to see themselves through your eyes, your lens. And he helped me to enable myself to do that and to be that. And I think there's something really, I mean, whether it's the universe, whether it's God, whatever it is, there's something very poignant about that kind of a role. And I see that you do that for people. What, your parents must be so proud of you.
Oh,
They must be so proud of you. But I think about you too. What do you think, when you look back on this time, what do you think you're going to be most proud of?
I think one of the most meaningful aspects of life is just making other people feel like they matter. There's been moments in my life where I was filled with self-doubt and anxiety and fear, and people did things for me that they don't even recognize made the world of a difference. And I really believe that it's not the big moments on stage or even the profession or the books, but the small moments where I just transferred belief into another human being. And there's a few moments that stick out in my mind, but one that just I'll never ever forget. Um, One of my best friends was struggling during the pandemic, and I called him one afternoon, and he told me that he was still lying in bed, and it was 2 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
If you're still in bed at 2 p.m., probably not doing so great.
Mm-hmm.
Phone call ends. I just wanted to do something to make him feel better, and I came across this post on his Facebook searching for something that he liked from a few years earlier that said his favorite food to eat was tacos. And I was like, oh my goodness, Morgane, I'm going to get my friend tacos. Like this is cool. And so I went on Uber Eats and I found this taco dinner for two, and I punched in his home address. You know how you can watch the car drive down all the streets?
Mm-hmm.
I'm staring at my phone 20 minutes watching this vehicle, and I finally get the notification saying the tacos have been delivered. Literally less than a minute, my phone rings. A FaceTime call from my friend Andrew. His wife is sitting beside him on bar stools in front of their kitchen countertop, box of tacos open behind them,
Aw.
bawling their eyes out.
Aw.
You ever try to cry and talk at the same time? This
Yeah.
guy is like, dude, these tacos changed our life. And I'm like, bro, relax. It's 2 tacos in a box. And he's like, you're missing the whole point. Like we are struggling. You didn't recognize we had to shut down our business and lay off employees and don't know how we're actually going to make ends meet for the next little while. For you, it's just a box of tacos. But for us, this is a moment of hope that we're going to remember forever. And he never let it go. The next day, he sent me 500 taco emojis. The next 12 months, every time he called me, he'd bring it up. And then he even went as far as on my birthday to create a logo of a bright yellow smiling taco. And above it, it says,
my
be
gosh.
someone's taco.
I love it. Oh, I love it. And if you can't see that, there's like this sticker of the cutest taco with your name under it. I love it.
If you're listening, if you search be someone's taco on Google, you'll find the image. It should pop up. And when you ask me, what are you most proud of? It's not that specific story, but it's those moments where you make somebody else feel special and like they matter. I believe that one of the ways we live a more fulfilling life is by serving others. It makes us feel great about ourselves, and it also helps somebody else. And I'm looking for those taco moments every single day.
I love it. I think that's so interesting because I was just reading this book, actually. Burnout's a big, big passion of mine. And I love this idea of contribution because what the lady said in the book was that quite often burnout stems from a lack of purpose. And a lot of people go, well, how do I find my purpose? I don't know. I don't really have a clear compass. I don't know direction. And one of the things that they suggested, there were 3 things that we would sort of adhere ourselves to as we're trying to find some sense of purpose. And they said one of them was contribution, another one was connection, and then another one was accomplishment. So if we can find some sense of purpose in one of those 3, in the way that you did was that deep contribution, like you don't always have to buy something. It's just how can you contribute to make somebody's life better in the compliments that we give people or the ways that we lift them up. I just think it's such a beautiful way to find a sense of forward direction, momentum, all of those things. And you really can't be stuck in your own story, let's say, or your own narrative about how terrible things are. And it's legitimate, life is really hard. And sometimes you get smacked down with things and it's unexpected and it's a bad surprise and it's not good. But it's hard to stay stuck in that narrative of life being really, really hard when you're helping somebody. And I think it gives you a lot of joy when you're able to give back to people, right? Is burnout, overwhelm, and low motivation holding your team back? Well, I help people like you in education, the corporate world, and in healthcare to regain a sense of themselves through simple life edits. All you have to do to transform your team is contact me for your next workshop or keynote.
It's the best feeling in the world. I think about moments where people did it for me and I was on the receiving end. And there are moments I'll never forget. I almost quit speaking after the pandemic. I had over 30 presentations canceled. And I fortunately had a coach named Chris who, he just asked me a question. Like he listened to me for 40 minutes crying on a phone call.
Yeah.
And didn't give me advice. And I think this is so important. He just chose to be there. And most of the time when our students are struggling, they don't want advice right away. They just want us to be there. They want someone to listen, to be a shoulder. And I think it's the same even if you're an adult. Like sometimes we know the answer, but we just want someone to listen to our story and sit in the mud. And Chris just sat in the mud. And at the end of the call, it's like, Sam, meet me at this location Tuesday morning. I want to show you something. And it was a Google pin to an industrial building in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, dude, am I going to make it out of this story alive? Like, what's going on here? And he's like, trust me, dude, just show up. And I show up and I walk in this building and I see Chris standing on a stage delivering a presentation to nobody. There's 6 TV screens in front of him. There's hundreds of people on Zoom calls. And there's two people holding cameras over their right shoulders filming him on stage.
Yes.
And I sat in the corner for 60 minutes and I was like, wow, maybe this thing still is possible despite the fact that there's a pandemic because he's doing it. And he walked off stage afterwards, shook my hand, big smile on his face. And he said, Sam, do you know what happens when things get really difficult in any industry? It's like, I don't know. He's like, well, 99% of people quit. And the reality is the work you're doing, the work you do, Morgane, with burnout and belonging, it's like during those moments, it's needed more than ever. He's like, Sam, if the service is needed more than ever and less people are doing it, if more people need it and less people are doing it, don't you think it's your biggest opportunity?
Right. Good thinking, coach.
Goosebumps. Goosebumps. I ran out the venue, went to Best Buy, bought a webcam, bought a microphone, got a terrible ring light that all the influencers use.
Yeah.
And set up this crappy virtual studio in my bedroom. But like,
Nice.
Chris made me feel like it was possible. And I think when I was on the receiving end of those moments, it's just, I can't even put it into words. It just makes you feel like you matter and things are possible for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. What would you say to somebody, because I think this is really, really important. What would you say to somebody who wants to start something, but they feel hesitant? Because I think I've come across a lot of people in the speaking that I've done, and I'm sure with the kids that that you're encountering, they're going, how do I do what you do? Or I've got an idea, but I feel a little scared, or people are going to laugh at me. Like, what would you say to people, adults or students that you encounter? What do you do when you have an idea, but you feel a little scared to start?
Don't ask somebody who's not doing it. That would be step number one, because if someone's not doing it, they're going to have a really hard time giving you advice on how you should do it. Even people that are closest to us. Hypothetically, if my dad started a restaurant and it failed and I had a dream as his son to start a restaurant and I asked my dad, do you think I should start a restaurant? He would tell me it's the worst idea in the world, don't do it. Not because he wants to squish my dream, but because his past experience was a failure and he wants to protect me. So he's projecting his past in the form of his opinion to keep me safe. But if I walk down the street to Fat Bastard Burrito, where I get burritos for lunch every day because they give you extra chicken if you have a Good Life membership, and I ask them, because they have a booming organization, hey, do you think I should start a restaurant? The manager would say, yes, it's a great business. So step one, don't ask someone who's not doing it. Instead, ask somebody who's already doing it. And I like to use a filter. I ask myself, is this a person that I want to be like in terms of their values, in terms of the way they operate in life? And secondly, do I believe they have my genuine best interest in their heart? If I can answer yes to both of those questions, I take their advice seriously and I act on it quick. I think one of the best things we can do when someone gives us their time or advice is take it in, act on it as quick as possible, and circle back with feedback. Hey, thank you so much for telling me what to do. I did it already, and here's the result I got. What's next? That's called being coachable. And I think any young person, any adult, anybody who does that is going to enrich the experience they have with this new mentor, and they're going to want to keep pouring into you and showing you the way. And I think, those are the thoughts that come to mind when I think about someone who has an idea. Go find someone who's doing it really well and is excited about it. And those people will show you the steps.
Oh, so good. Talk to me a little bit, just being cognizant of time. I think we got a few more minutes to dig in if you do. Talk to me a little bit about the concept. And I don't know if this is something that you've really dug into a ton, but I've talked about many people that I've been inspired by about their front row or their bottom hands or their chosen, whatever it is, like their personal sort of people that they bounce things off of that they really trust. Talk to me about how you select those people, or do you have that? Is that something that resonates for you? Talk to me about that.
I have a friend named Timmy the Dreamer. He's a phenomenal human being. He speaks about dreaming and chasing dreams, and he calls these people dream mates, not teammates, but dream mates, having someone you can dream with. And when I think about the folks in my life that I surround myself the closest with, every single one of them has something that I sincerely admire about them. And I think that's how I've selected, aside from values, similar values, the way they treat people, their kindness towards others, their moral compass, that's a non-negotiable. But outside of the moral compass, if they have something that I'm incredibly in awe of, like my best friend Lucas, who will literally walk to anybody and start a conversation, who will pitch people his business idea in the elevator, who will drive 9 hours to have a meeting for 30 minutes and drive 9 hours back because he so believes in his vision and his mission. I admire that about him, his courage. And so he's a close friend of mine. Or Savio Joseph, who can make connections with absolutely anybody. His ability to network and build relationships is something I admire about him. Or Cross, he's one of the happiest people I know. His level of gratitude is something I aspire to carry in my life. So I think when I reflect on the folks in my life who've had the greatest impact, they all have a similar moral compass. They treat people kindly. That's non-negotiable. And then they have something about them that I sincerely admire and would love to embody in myself. And I would also say that you find those people not by just intentionally searching, but by going down your own journey of personal and professional development. And we attract these people into our life over time based on similar interests, similar events, and just the energy we're choosing to live in every single day.
Oh, I love that. And I think that goes for anything. Choosing your people really comes from a place of who do you want to be around? Who do you want to be? And I think reflects outward, right? It's kind of a ripple effect and a downward, it does sort of feed back into that group that you're with. Talk to me a little bit about self-care. I think sometimes this is a big part of the burnout work that I do, because I think sometimes it gets a bad rap. People think it's like bubble baths and getting your nails done if you're a girl, or, doing things that seem superficial. But at the end of the day, you mentioned exercise before, and I'll say, I'd love to know kind of what your routine is, what you like to do. And then what are some other things that you do to sort of better yourself, to push yourself to be the best version of Sam?
I believe hands down, exercise is the absolute best activity to build self-confidence. I tell myself I'm going to go to the gym every single day, and I follow through on that personal commitment. And therefore I trust myself and I trust my word, which I believe is invaluable. Not to mention it has so many physical and mental benefits, but the way it makes me feel in the morning is something that nothing else can do for me. As a result, even after I stopped playing soccer, I work out every single morning. I am a early to bed, early rise kind of person. It's just how I operate, and I feel the best. My best friend Cross, who I talked about, who has lots of gratitude, meets me at the gym at 5:30. We do a roughly 60-minute workout together, followed by a 20-minute meditation in the mind room at Good Life, which is like a dark room. And we then go home. I eat breakfast. I'll journal about the day before, take a shower, and start my day.
Nice.
That's my morning routine, whether I'm on the road or whether I'm at home. Other practices that have been super foundational, yoga. I find that a lot of my life is go, 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 go. And if you don't balance that with activities that refuel and refill your energy, you burn out. And I'm speaking from personal experience. I had a year where we did 187 events, schools. And I say we aspirationally, it was me, myself, and I. I do have a team now, but at that point in my life, it was me that would do emails, and me that would hop on sales calls, and me that would book the travel, and me that would drive. And I got allergic reactions and physical reactions to the experience that were enough of a sign for me to slow down and stop. In yoga, they talk about yin and yang and balancing the two. If your life is go, 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 make sure you have other moments that are complete restoration and relaxation. Today's a perfect example. After this podcast is done, I'm going to be going to a restorative yoga class, which is essentially sleeping on a bolster for an hour. And I'm going to leave that class and I'm going to feel amazing.
Yes. Yeah. Restorative yoga is amazing. It is like a physical transformation. And sometimes when they use those sound bowls too, it is an unbelievable experience.
Yes.
I love that. That's so great.
Those are some of the habits that come to mind.
Yeah. I think this is such important stuff because many teachers, parents, even when I think about any students that might be listening to this, because I know that you're really popular in that generation too, is it's important to do those little things. Like, you don't have to necessarily go to the gym for an hour, but you can still reap the benefits even if you do it 20 minutes or 15 minutes a day. Go for a walk in the morning. It's more the idea of keeping a promise to yourself, which I absolutely love as a concept. I think that's a really, really important thing. Sam, before we sign off, what advice or what last piece of information would you like to leave the audience with before we say goodbye?
My neighbor Ruel, real quick. I recently went to his house 6 months ago. I hadn't seen him for a few months. He bought a copy of my book, Empty Your Backpack, and then was so excited to tell me that every single night he read it to his kids to help them fall asleep. And I was like, wow, that's great, man. Thanks for the feedback. They're like 1 and 3 years old, so I don't think they understood it anyway. But he pulled me to his porch and he got really emotional out of nowhere and was like, dude, they didn't understand the book, but I did. And it inspired me to quit my job. And I was like,
wow,
that's not the intended effect I was hoping the book was going to have. But he said, it was my dad's dream for me to pursue this for 25 years and climb the corporate ladder. And I just got the highest promotion I can possibly get. But all I ever wanted to do since I was a little kid was fix bicycles. And he got it from his porch, walked to his garage and punched in some numbers in the keypad. The door goes up and there's 60 bikes hanging on the wall.
Wow.
And he started his own company fixing bikes, and he started taking them off the wall and got so excited explaining me the stories behind each of the bicycles and became like a little kid in front of my eyes. We spent 15 minutes talking, and I left the garage and I was like, how did you do this? He's like, I stopped playing for the points and I started playing for the love of the game. And there might be something that the educator listening to this right now that you have pushed aside for so long to play the game of life, to support your family and friends. But you don't have to let that thing just sit in the corner in a box. Like, pull it out, experiment with it, go and take those classes or do that thing you put off for so long. I think that's the last thing I'd like to leave with the audience. Find what your bike project is and don't wait to start it, because we never really know when we're going to have more time to work on a project or a passion or not.
Oh, amen to that. That is so important. Make your 80-year-old self proud of you, right? So you think about your 8-year-old, you think about your 80-year-old, and what's your trajectory? And is that person going to be just as proud as the 8-year-old is, right? I love it.
If you're looking to connect with me online, the best way to do it is to look out your window. It's impossible to miss the giant red backpack. All jokes aside, if you search Sam Demma on Google, you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and my website, which is samdemma.com. And I would love the opportunity to connect with you.
Sam Demma, thank you so much for being on Hindsight 101 with me. It has been so inspiring. And I love that you tie so many stories in, because as we know, we really anchor ourselves to story. And so you just did a beautiful job of doing that. So thank you.
Thanks, Morgan. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Hindsight 101 with me, your host, Morgan Michael. It has been an absolute pleasure. I always learn so much, but really, I want to hear what you've learned. Please find me on social media by searching Morgan Michael and reach out. I always love to hear from people.